Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Talking Cubs. I'm your host, Ryan Davis, and today I'll be joined by my co host, Sean Sears, in just a moment. We're going to be talking about a Cubs first baseman in our player previews. It's really the Cubs first baseman. Sean, Anthony Rizzo, what do you expect from him this year? Another year of greatness?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, he's the greatest leadoff hitter of all time, right? Is that what we've officially deemed him as?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, who knows if he's actually going to lead off this year? I kind of hope he doesn't, just because that means the Cubs have probably found somebody.
yeah. That's how I would hope for too. I mean, Rizzo has been nothing but probably the most consistent Cub they've had in a really long time. Obviously, he had a slow start to 2018, but really picked it up after I think it was like a slow April or May. From there, just kind of started becoming that player that we can expect from him. Close to 30 home runs, close to 100 RBI, guy that just consistently pushes this offense through. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you'd expect probably another season close to that 30 home runs, 90 plus RBI. He plays an excellent defense. He just kind of brings everything he can to the baseball field. And obviously, he's the team leader for the Cubs. So, I mean, he's going to have a big role this year, particularly just, obviously what he needs to produce on the field, as well as kind of the tumultuous locker room that they've somewhat had. Maybe not tumultuous is the right word, but it's been definitely a difficult offseason. So I think it'll be important to see Rizzo's kind of role as more than just being a baseball player. We already saw him on Instagram taking pictures of everyone on the team and making sure they have awkward selfie pictures of everyone. It's stuff like that that kind of breaks the ice and makes things obviously a little more, easygoing and easier to focus on baseball. So I feel like that role for Rizzo this year is probably more crucial than it's been ever.
Yeah, and you kind of hit on it there. Last season, his numbers, if you just look at the overall season numbers, are down a little bit from what you kind of expect for him. But the context is important. He had his back injury in April, which is actually becoming a yearly thing. It required a DL stint. He had a terrible month of April, but from May 1st to the end of the season, so essentially just cutting out that first month of the season, he hit 303 with a 393 on base, a 512 slugging, 24 home runs, 92 RBI. So basically, he was the Anthony Rizzo that you know from May 1st through the end of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, you can't say enough about what Rizzo brings to this team in terms of offensive as well as just like who he is. But what he's bringing every year, it's huge. He's literally, I mean, he can just get a hit in any moment. He have two strikes. It's tough to find a better batter. Rizzo just gives you consistent, constant offense. Now, the issue hasn't necessarily been Rizzo obviously last year and a little bit of 2017 as well. It's been getting guys in front of him on base. And as you kind of hinted at before, if Rizzo's not leading off, obviously good things are probably happening with the offense, and you found someone that can consistently get on base in front of him. These last couple of years, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo have been consistent, 380 plus on base guys, close to 400. Their OPS is near 900. When those guys are getting on base and doing those things, they're some of the best run producing players in offense, in baseball in general. But when they're not doing those type of things, when they're not getting on base or they're the only ones getting on base, obviously there's an issue. And that was a big part of the first half of the Cubs season last year. We kind of forget about how Bryant and Rizzo, for when they were both hitting at one time, particularly Chris Bryant, he had a great, I think, April and May. People kind of forget about that before he hurt his shoulder. They were doing excellent and getting on base. It was just no one else behind them was stepping up. So the Cubs not only need Anthony Rizzo to be the guy he is, but they need to hope for someone behind him or in front of him to get on base so Rizzo can be as productive as he can be.
I think that's something that everyone kind of forgets about with the down offensive season last year. Everyone kind of focuses on the second half scheduling and Bryant's shoulder injury, but with Rizzo with his back injury in that bad April, he and Bryant had an overlap of maybe like 3 weeks where they were both really going well in May, and I feel like the Cubs are actually pretty good at that point. So you bring up some really interesting points about with both those guys going well again and healthy at the same time. That could be a huge difference. Rizzo this season, 29 years old. I think he's going to turn 29 in August. Maybe he's already 29 and is going to turn 30 in August. I'm dropping the ball on that. I forget that number, but at least 29 in theory this season. He's been the Cubs' first baseman since coming up in 2012 in the middle of the year. This will be 7.5 seasons for him at first base for the Cubs. I looked it up on Fangraphs. In the modern Cubs era, Rizzo is number 8 in wins above replacement in franchise history. And among players who are primarily first basemen, so not counting Ernie Banks, who played a lot at first base, but earned most of his wins above replacement as a shortstop, he's only behind Mark Grace on that list. So is it fair to say that Rizzo, before he's even turned 30 years old, is already an all-time great in Cubs franchise history?
Yeah, I would think he, in fan lore alone, is already one of the best and most, like, I mean, influential players the Cubs have had play at first base, or in general. But yeah, I mean, Mark Grace is a great first baseman. Obviously, there's been some really good first basemen for the Cubs. Derek Lee, there's some options there. But obviously, Anthony Rizzo, I think, has been clear cut probably the most, I mean, important player the Cubs have had in the last like 15 years, 20 years potentially. And that's kind of crazy to think that, you've had so many good players come through here, but what Rizzo has done for the Cubs since being called up is just, I mean, the Cubs before, I mean, it's crazy to think now we've got Chris Bryant, we've got Kyle Schwarber, we've got Ian Haps of the world, Abler Moros, first round picks that are here. The Cubs hadn't had a prospect pan out for a really long time. And even calling Rizzo a Cub prospect is probably a little bit misguided. Obviously, he was traded from the Padres, but even still, the Cubs have had a horrible success rate of any type of minor league player coming through. Like Tyler Colvin and Starlin Castro were like at one point like the big deal for the Cubs, and obviously Castro, great player. Tyler Colvin, not
so
didn't
much.
work. Yeah, it didn't work out. So I mean, it's kind of a rarity to see a guy like Rizzo come through, be on this team through just terrible baseball for as long as we can remember, at least, and go through four years maybe of just really bad baseball, still be the player he is now, and still, I mean, you can't say enough about Anthony Rizzo. He's just so important to this team to have a guy just come up from where he did, work his way through the system, and get traded to the Cubs just as he's about to come up. I mean, it's worked out great for Chicago. And I mean, you don't hear anyone talk about Andrew Cashner at this point. So
No, I feel like you can easily say that the Cubs won that trade now, although people were still debating it, I think, as recent as like 2014, which is kind of funny to me. But anyway, that's our talk on Anthony Rizzo. We expect big things out of him again this year. He's, like we said, one of the most important players in franchise history. So what do you think? Do you think Rizzo is going to be great again this year, or are you concerned about the back problem that seems to be an issue for him every year? Chronic back issues don't tend to go away. So let us know what you think down in the comments below. If you like content like this, if you like our Cubs player previews that we're doing heading into the season, go ahead and go down there and click that subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know that you like what we're doing. It really helps us a lot, helps us motivate ourselves to get up and do these videos and get it all set up for you guys here on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and we will talk to you again next time.